Good afternoon, Okaloosa County Commissioners. My name is Dr. Todd Osborne. I am a professor of Estuarine and Aquatic Biogeochemistry at the University of Florida's Whitney Laboratory for Marine Biosciences. I'm also a faculty member within the Soil, Water, and Ecosystem Sciences Department at UF, and I hold affiliate faculty status in both Florida Sea Grant and the UF Water Institute. And it's a pleasure for me to be able to speak with you guys today. I apologize, I'm not there in person. Personal health issues have me kind of stuck here in St. Augustine at the moment. But as a professional, I feel obligated to weigh in on the issue of the SS United States sinking in your waters. And I know there's a plan moving forward to do so. And I just wanted to give you a couple of comments. I have a written report that I provided you with, and these comments that I'm giving you now in a recorded format are just to help solidify some of the statements that I made in that report. But in general, I want to make it clear that I'm not receiving any kind of financial or monetary compensation for my time here or for my reporting. This was all done out of professional consideration. I'm a Floridian. I love the state of Florida. I love our coastlines, and I'm troubled by the way this plan is moving forward for a couple of reasons, and I want to elaborate on those a little bit for you if I can have just a couple of minutes of your time. But thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for listening. First off, I think that there's a lot of issues surrounding sinking vessels. There always are, and one of the main ones we worry about is toxicity of the contaminants that are within those vessels. And of course, with a vessel of the age of the SS United States, this vessel was built at a time when we didn't know the actual environmental toxicity of some of the components that are used in it. And I know there's been some remediation of those materials, of some of those materials in this vessel prior to the plans to have it scuttled for a dive reef. But the one that really brings concern to me as a professional chemist is hexavalent chromate, and chromium by itself is a heavy metal that we do control. We have state and federal laws that are applicable to its discharge to the environment, but specifically chromium 6 plus, what we call it, hexavalent chromium, is extremely toxic to aquatic organisms. And as a chemist, I see the effects of toxicity in the environment all the time, and I will tell you that hexavalent chromium is one of the worst when it comes to heavy metal toxicities. And what happens is, and this works on several levels in aquatic organisms. Of course, the invertebrates, the things that live in the sediment, and the small encrusting organisms are usually the ones that feel it first. And this can be organ damage, this can be DNA damage, and it can be significant reproductive harm in the case that may even cease reproductive activities. Now you scale that up with vertebrate organisms like fish. They consume these organisms, and they're also exposed directly by water or sediment if they're active in the sediment. And those organisms experience toxicity on all the levels I just mentioned, as well as probably the more insidious one, which is bioaccumulation, meaning they bring on a body burden of this material, and its toxic effects continue through the food web, as it were, as larger organisms consume the smaller ones. So fish can be very dangerous that way, and they don't stay put. Of course, they migrate around, and so we spread toxicity with that. Now, I understand that there's desire to do this project to bring in potentially more visitors, bring in potentially more revenue for the county, which is a great, I totally support that. My concern, though, is that this is a very large vessel. It was built at a time when the use of zinc chromate and hexavalent chromium in corrosion-resistant paints were used heavily. And this vessel is absolutely full. I provide a document to you to review where I go through a calculation to understand that and kind of estimate what the loadings are. And I will just tell you that we went on a very conservative estimate by trying to kind of get an average square footage of a vessel of this size. I used a lot of artificial intelligence opportunities, to search for vessels and find what an average would be. But our estimates here, I believe, are very conservative. And when we get down to the brass tacks of how much hexavalent chromium is being added to the environment, it's staggering. And I want to warn about this, because not only does this impact our environment, it impacts the animals and both the vertebrates and invertebrates that live there. But once they've taken on this body burden of toxicity, that also translates to people. So seafood is at risk here in and around these areas. The sediments can be poisoned by this stuff for millennia. It's not that it dissipates and goes away. Chromium is an element. It's a metal that, as a heavy metal, is quite persistent, and it's one that's very dangerous because of that nature. We don't use it the same way anymore because now we know about this toxicity, and that's why this vessel is a high risk. And I say that from a couple of different perspectives. I mean, history's told us, like, the USS Oriskany, they had to do major mitigation to remove all of that material. It's a very expensive endeavor to literally grind off this paint on all the surfaces inside a vessel like this. And we're talking about millions of square feet. This is a significant process, right? And based on the records that I reviewed of of the painting schedules, I mean, there's an awful lot in there. But let's take that to the next level. So this vessel's scuttled, and as this paint degrades in a salty environment, which is designed for, so it's going to be a slow release of this toxic material, these heavy metals, specifically hexavalent chromium. This is very active, and it bioaccumulates very readily. Now, it's been suggested, or so I've heard in previous meetings, that this will be okay, it naturally converts to chromium-3. Well, as a chemist, I want to tell you that that is not necessarily the case. Yes, that can happen, but that is a reductive oxidation chemical process we call redox chemistry. And what that means is this occurs, and it's biologically mediated by bacteria that thrive in areas of no oxygen. This means, hypoxia or anoxic conditions, right? So we don't see that reduction, that change from chromium-6 to chromium-3 readily in an oxidized environment, meaning oxygen is present. So this vessel may sink into the sediment, and true that the portions of the vessel that are actually under the sediment surface can experience anaerobic conditions with no oxygen, and that chromium may be reduced. But the vast majority of this vessel is not going to be underground. It's going to be in the water column. Oxygen will be present, as we all hope, right, for the fish to be there. And the toxicity opportunity here, the mode of toxicity, can be tremendous. I really want to caution you about that process, because while it may be expensive to remediate this on land, I mean, it may be inhibitory because of the expense to remove all this metal from the superstructure and all the surfaces within the vessel. Putting it out as it is now could be a really expensive endeavor. And I want you to think about that, because should you end up creating your own little Superfund site there will be responsibilities to clean it up by all parties involved. And that could be a financial noose that would be crippling for a long time, because it may be easy to sink a ship, but to raise it and remove it is a whole different process. And a vessel of that size is I mean, absolutely staggering in its enormity, right? So I guess my point today is that there's a document here that estimates the load, a tremendous load of chromium, and does talk a little bit about toxicity. But I do want to tell you, from a practitioner standpoint, a professional environmental chemist standpoint, that this is a heavy risk for the county to undertake. It may be fast-tracked through permitting at the moment, simply because there's not a lot of bodies in that office taking a look at it. But should it elicit problems in the future, cleaning up issues like this are more than expensive. They're tremendous. They are what they call Superfund sites, because it's so expensive to fix a problem. It's a lot less expensive to avoid a problem. And so I want to give you great caution on moving forward with this project for that reason. I do believe that the intent is good and the idea is good. I think the vessel is wrong. And I will say that as my professional opinion. Now, my background again, I do hold a PhD in soil and water science, specializing in biogeochemistry and aquatic environments. And I say that from a professional perspective. And I want to at least offer that to you for consideration prior to moving forward any more with this project. Perhaps, a different vessel would fit the bill better. But I do believe that going on currently as planned could create a really, really big problem, not only for the county as a responsible party, but also for the state of Florida, for the federal EPA to have to weigh in on it too. And I know that I don't think it's worth the risk. I think it's rolling the dice, as it were, to endeavor like this, to take this on. And knowing the risks and the processes that occur and how the toxicity can be a big problem, I think it's worth a second thought. I'd be glad to answer questions. My colleagues that are there today can provide you with my contact information through the university, both phone and email. I'll be glad to answer any questions you put together. And again, I'm sorry for personal reasons, I cannot join you today to answer those in person. But we'll be glad to offer that service, of course, at no charge if you desire to talk about it some more. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your consideration.